Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Schmidt List. I'm your host, Kurt Schmidt. Today, we're going to be talking with my good friend, Jim Keane, friend and mentor. He's an amazing person. I want you to stick around because we're going to be talking about a lot of very interesting things today, specifically around when is it time to leave? When is it time to go in all aspects? And I want to talk about that. But speaking of going, you should really go and check out the book, Little Book of Networking is available now on Amazon. So don't miss out. It's getting a lot of great reviews. I've got tons of people really enjoying reading it. So make sure you go and check that out. So recently I shut down my agency, Foundry, along with my partners. And we decided to kind of go our separate ways and do different things. Jim is also in a similar situation where he's closing down his business and moving on to the next thing as well. So today we're going to be exploring a little bit about what that means, how you go about that, and obviously the emotional labor that goes into such a thing. So let's talk to Jim. Jim, how are you today?
Hey, Kurt, I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show.
Thank you for being here. You're one of my favorite people to talk to. So I'm excited to explore this topic with you today. So Jim, tell me about a little bit about your background and what you've been up to most recently.
I have got when I look back on it now, it's kind of a long and circuitous route, but there's a throughway that has kind of emerged. I've spent my entire career helping people in business figure out how to take advantage of the emerging technologies that are coming to market and how to use those tools and tech to grow their business or to work smarter or to work harder. And I got my career start at the beginning of the internet boom. And I am now at the beginning of the AI boom. And I feel like I'm right back where I started. Over the course of my career, it's been a pretty even split between agency and professional services organizations, including time working with the team at Cicerone, where I was the president there, time working with the team at the late, great Kart Labs, where I was a partner and the president there. And then most recently, working with a good team of friends and coworkers at Fahren here in the Twin Cities. And when I wasn't leading professional services organizations, I was working in corporate environments. First of all, at American Express, where I was on the digital strategy team there, and then at Ameriprise Financial, where I was part of the team that built that brand and all the digital capabilities and all of the go-to-market for the consumer acquisition and customer acquisition. And then also a 7-year run at General Mills, where I was leading pretty much all the digital marketing work there. And just it was an incredible experience.
Yeah.
So it's a good split between agency guy and corporate middle manager.
Yeah. Great culture over at General Mills too. I highly recommend if people are interested in working a place, it's a great place to work.
Yeah, the people are incredible. And it's just, they're committed to doing good work in a good way and making great products. It's just an incredible organization. I feel very, very fortunate to have been there.
Yeah. Speaking of incredible organizations, Jim, so you've helped grow a lot of those professional service organizations. And when I first started my first agency, I had to leave a very successful, very large agency, kind of at its peak in a way. It was very hard for me to take off and go, but there was a lot of things that was going on with me personally at the time, which was, I was trying to move the organization in a way that wasn't interested in moving. And then I was presented with this opportunity to go and put up or shut up, I guess. And it really just came down to, I couldn't see myself going back to work and raging against the machine that wasn't going to be listening to me, not because they're jerks or anything. That wasn't it. They had a different strategy than what my strategy was going to be. And so I had an opportunity to go and do it myself. Now, that's a challenging place to be in because I know lots of other people that can be in that position where they feel like I have to test my skills, I guess. I have to see if I'm full of crap or not. Is kind of what it came down to. And that's why I'd left and helped run Foundry for the last 7 or 8 years. And we did really well. We grew really quickly. A lot of the things that I wanted to do back at that previous agency. We're very successful in the new agency. We made a lot of the same mistakes that we did at the last agency too. It taught me a lot. And always while I was going through that, I felt a lot of empathy for people that might be going through the same sort of challenge that I was going through. And it's always been kind of on my radar to launch a business that specifically works with professional services organizations, specifically in the marketing, software, web, internet sort of space, because I've got the scars to show for the work that I did during that time. I wanted to help other people overcome that because early on in the agency world, there seems to be sort of a scarcity mindset. So there isn't a lot of big organizations or a lot of choices in organizations of places to work with other agencies or get to know those other agencies. It's not, we've got the Bureau of Digital, right, which is one sort of big one, but in other industries, there's tons of different conferences and different things around that, but not in our world. So can you tell me about when you started Fahren? Was it a similar spot where you were like, I see this opportunity and I trust in my skill set, I'm ready to go? What went on there?
I'm going to try to boil down War and Peace into a couple bullet points.
Great.
And I feel obliged to acknowledge how fortunate I have been to get my start at a time when the internet was booming, and the core of my career has been in the fast growth of the internet. So in a lot of ways, the opportunities that I've been able to pursue have been part of a broader trend. The go-kart situation is really unique because I was in the right organization at the right time for me and at a key time for them. So the context is I was part of the leadership team at Kart Labs, and the core idea of go-kart is that everyone's an entrepreneur. And in the water there, in the culture, it was teaching and encouraging an entrepreneurial mindset. And it started at the top, and it was part of every person that was in there to think and act and approach work like an entrepreneur and approach things like a startup. So whether it was Don or AJ at the top or all the rest of us, we had it in our minds that we all have opportunities to be entrepreneurs. Strongly encouraged there. The second sort of thread through this is that my whole goal as a professional was to be in a position where I could start my own professional services firm. So when I was leaving General Mills, my choice to go to go-kart was so that I could learn how a well-run professional service organization really works. And I got everything I needed and then some from the great team at go-kart. Lastly, the third thread here is that I had two young boys, and I had consistently talked about the power of entrepreneurship and the role of small businesses in America and how small businesses are really the heart of America versus corporations. And I felt like it was time for me to actually put my money where my mouth was. And so I wanted to kind of actually put up or shut up, as you say. So I did. So I drew up the business plan for Fahren. It was going to originally be a business launched out of go-kart, but after a lot of discussions, we realized it would be better if I just did it with my partner, Joe. And so we launched it and grew it outside of go-kart. So I got very, very lucky being surrounded by some incredibly supportive partners at go-kart and a very supportive wife at home. And I had been planning for this for 4 or 5 years.
Mm-hmm.
I had the financial resources to pull the trigger on something like that without putting everything at risk. It was right time, right place.
Yeah. Yeah. Again, just like you said, it wasn't a snap of the finger decision. It wasn't a my back's against the wall and I have to make a call sort of thing. But what's interesting though is that those decisions sometimes are easier, right? Like being laid off or being fired or a business closing, things that are completely out of your control. The direction might seem muddy, but it's clear then if you're thinking about what are the possibilities, like it's and just kind of be comfortable and try to make it put in more work into it to make this job feel better than it did before, or I can go off and I can branch off on my own, which is scary and there's no support and there's no infrastructure. And all those things. So it's almost like it's a really challenging decision. I didn't realize how challenging it would be at the time, even though I had planned for it for a while. That's what I was going to do.
It gets hard when you have been thinking about something for a long time and you've always had reasons why you couldn't do it, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden those reasons why you couldn't do it are no longer there. And that and then you're kinda like, "All right, dude, are you gonna
Oh
do
yeah.
this or not?"
Yeah. Exactly. You're going to stop talking about it. And when we closed down Foundry, for example, when we came to that decision, it wasn't easy because it was a pretty strong, at least local brand, and giving up something like that seemed like a bad idea. I had a lot of people ask me, Jim, why didn't we sell it? And I was like, well, we were really good with money. We had plenty of money in the bank. We didn't need to sell it. And as in a lot of cases, when you do sell a company, you kind of go along with it for a while too, right? You get stuck in a contract for a year or two because they're not dumb. They're buying the company and they don't want to just eject the people that made it successful, right?
Yeah, they'd
So
be buying you a nil, so
yeah, they'd be buying us in a way. And so that wasn't of interest because we already had plans for what we wanted to do next. So when we finally came up with the decision of this makes the most sense, I mean, our attention immediately turned towards the employees and the people. Okay, how are we going to take care of them? And I think, and I mean, again, if there's a past employee listening to this can argue with it, I'd love to hear from you. But I think we did a really good job of making people very aware of what was going to take place very early on and letting people know. I think we told people 6 months before we actually closed down the business that we were planning on closing down the business.
yeah.
And even if people were still working during that 6 months, they knew that this road was going to end at some point. And what we did is we let people know, and then over the course of a month or two, we saw people putting in their notices because which we expected, fully expected. And then we let some people know we were going to move you to a contractor position at some point in the next 90 days. And then we saw more people put in their notice, which is great because we had planned for that as well. And then after the 90 days, we moved people to contractor. And then some people, when finally presented with that option, were like, yeah, no, I don't want to do that. So a few more people dropped off. And so it wasn't this mass extinction event that happened at the end of it. It kind of fizzled out over time in a comfortable way and still a lot of the employees, I still talk to a lot of them to this day, and they're all doing great. I mean, some of them got amazing jobs at Shopify and Atlassian, and we didn't hire bad people. I
Yeah, you had
wasn't
a
too
good team
worried
there.
that they were not going to be able to find something. And they did. The majority of them have. And it was a really positive thing, but it was very stressful for me and Nils and Robert too, because we had never done this before, right? We'd
Yeah.
never broken up before. So what did this mean for our personal relationship with each other? What does this mean for future business relationships? So it was a lot of uncharted water, but we assumed positive intent a lot,
Yep.
and that served us. That served us really well.
What a graceful way to bring something important to a close, and I think there's a lot that's admirable in how you guys navigated that. What I would tell you, just to sort of reflect on the Fahren situation relative to yours, what I think is really similar is neither one of us were in a fire sale
Right.
situation. This was a controlled landing.
Yes. Yeah.
This was not a crash landing. I would say is that I realized probably midsummer of 23 that I was going down the path of an acquisition. Somebody was going to acquire Fahren, and it, for a number of reasons, didn't work out. One of them was that they wanted a 3-year commitment from me, or they wanted a multi-year commitment from me. And then the other option was scale it up with a couple other business partners. And we can come back to this, but the choice I had to make is, did I have it in me to essentially go back to the entrepreneurial grind for another 2 to 3 years? Because I would
Right.
have to do that if we got acquired. and I would owe it to whoever came on to be as
Yeah, giving it
100%.
110%, right?
Yep, yep, I would need to be in as much as they were, and I didn't feel, for some reasons we can talk about later, that I was in a place to make that kind of multi-year commitment. And again, we can come back and talk through why. I in good faith, I couldn't ask somebody to risk their career given where I was at.
Sure.
And reputation is important to me, being good to other people is important to me, and I just couldn't do it. And so the decision was, we're going to run out the engagements that we have and the contracts that we have, and keep the commitments that we have, and deliver great work on all of our commitments. But we're just not going to take any new business on. And
Right.
we still have a couple contracts that we're
Yep.
working on now. They'll be done by the end of August, and at that point, then I'll be the only one at Fahren. So
We had a
it's
similar
been a
situation. We had to close down work in progress.
that's tricky though. I did not want to do that. I didn't cancel
Yeah.
any contracts. We negotiated the non-renewals. Like, we talked with some clients saying, look, I know
Right.
you want to renew,
Right.
but we're not going to renew these. But in general, it was a controlled, thoughtful, conscious uncoupling is what I would call it. So yeah, it sounds similar to how you
Yeah.
guys did it. I appreciate the way that you took care of your employees. Farron would not have existed without the great talent of the
Yeah.
contractors and consultants we worked with. And what's cool is you see people like Jen Swanson building incredible businesses, and she's just obviously so talented. And
Yeah.
it's cool to have been collaborators and coworkers with them for a while in our own way. And everyone's off doing something really interesting.
Yeah. I agree. I think, again, so many people worry that, and again, I think it goes back to that scarcity mindset that some people have. It's these people are going to be fine as long as they've got plenty of heads up. They're professionals. We didn't hire people that were bad at their job. They're going to be fine. You have to have faith in the people that you hired,
Right.
not only to do their job, but also to move on and be able to find their job from there. But we were also lucky because there was a lot of just messy stuff. I mean, we had one client that still owed us well over six figures and hadn't paid in 9 months.
Yeah.
Like, there was a lot of, and something I wasn't as accustomed to, a lot of ultimatums that came down. I really had to put on my business badge, if you will, and start policing some things during the final thing, because again, it's not like you can just carry this on for a while, because there was a deadline. We were gonna close things down, and then negotiating with the building and our lease. Nils went through a lot of pain and suffering trying to figure out how to do that. So there was a lot, I would say. I mean, there was a ton of emotional labor that went into it. The mechanics were pretty easy overall, but the emotional labor that went into it was very tricky. And that's the advice I would give anybody that's thinking about making a move. And you kind of touched on this too, Jim, is make sure you're in the right space, the right headspace for when you're making a big change like that. You've got to prepare yourself. Even though you don't know what's coming, you got to know it's not always going to be awesome.
Yeah, and what sounds it was helpful to you folks, is that it was a time boxed effort, but it wasn't like a five alarm fire. So you could
Right.
be as thoughtful as it's humanly possible to be
Yes.
about how you bring things to a close, because there's not a mad scramble. And I want to believe that, as Joe and Susan and I were sort of bringing Farron to a close over the last year or so, that we were thoughtful and good and conscious and empathetic to the people that we work with. I'm sure everyone's got some stories, and I'm sure at some point someone's going to come pull me aside and say, dude, you were such an asshole. I'm sure that's going to happen, but
That's unavoidable.
I feel like you have to if you have to wind something down, it's good to do it with being intentional and trying to be as kind as you can.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to be, because one of the reasons why we ultimately came to the decision is because if we decided to keep the business going, the culture would have changed dramatically. We probably would have brought in somebody else to run the place. It wouldn't have even been the same organization anyways, even if we were to just keep it running. And
Yep.
and as I mentioned, selling it wasn't an option either, because if I was going to be done with the company, I was going to be done with the company. Like I wasn't going to be, if I want to go work somewhere, I can certainly go do that.
So I want to maybe take a slight detour if we could.
Yeah, let's do it.
I've been thinking about in anticipation of this conversation, I've been thinking about how to think about the decision to wind down something that was working.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm I know myself well enough to know that in 6 months I'm going to look back and say, "You idiot. This thing was working. It was a good business. What did you do? You had cash,
Right.
you had connections, you
Yeah.
had talent. Like
Yep.
why did you do that?"
Yep.
And it made me think back to I had such a great experience being part of that go-kart team, but it
Yeah.
made me think back to the way that we talked with our clients. And we would always talk about the idea of an S curve. And every business has grows through a series of S curves. There's a little part on the bottom where you're trying to figure out what is next. Then there's a high slope where you're scaling. And then at the
Yeah.
top, it sort of flattens out where you're either optimizing or things
Yeah.
slow down or you get bored and you have to find the next thing. And what I realized for me personally was part of what the reason why I couldn't commit to some other partners or why I couldn't commit to an acquirer is that I was at the top of an S curve.
Yeah.
The trend of my career has been 60 to 80-hour weeks since the
Mhm.
late 90s,
Yep.
always on the front, trying to explain new stuff to people that didn't want to hear about it and trying to get them to do things that they didn't want to do because it was in the best interest of their team and their business. And then having to explain how it was going to work and then support them while they were trying to do something that they probably didn't really want to do, but they felt compelled to do. And I've been doing that for, I don't know, 30 years, 25 years. And I had hit the top of that curve and my brain needed a reboot. My heart needed a reset and I needed to change the way that I work because it wasn't sustainable. And it just made me realize like I was not in a position to in good faith work the way that some future partners would need, my or a future acquirer would need. And I just couldn't commit personally to working the way that I would have needed to work. And frankly, I just needed something new. So I'm trying to figure out
Yep.
what my next S curve is. So now I'm in the bottom of the S curve trying to
Yeah.
the search has started. What is it that I really personally need, personally and professionally? And then I will eventually find the thing that kind of grows.
Yeah. Yeah. McKinsey has a similar sort of thing, right? The horizons that they do. And that always spoke to me too. I think it's great. The thing for me is that you never know where you are. To your point, you kind I mean, you have an idea where you are on the curve, but you don't know exactly where on the curve you are. Your trajectory a little bit, right?
Yeah.
But not necessarily your place. You know where the momentum is going, but when does it start and when does it stop, right? So for me, no, and you talked about this too, Jim, is that even though the next phase is not a mad scramble to get to, but at some point, like it has to lock in, right?
Yeah.
It has to lock in and be that is now the future. This is now the direction. And for me, I think that's where I've been struggling with is like when does that point hit where where it's locked in? Like the seatbelts are on, the
Yeah.
5 point harness is in, and we are strapped in and we are going to Mars. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that's been, I think finding that has been a challenge because
Have
go ahead.
sorry to interrupt, but
No, please.
have you had that kind of confidence and clarity in the past in your career where you knew I am 100% clear on what I should be doing and I'm 100% clear that I am in. and I'm going to put everything in.
Yeah, one time for sure. One time.
Yeah.
I see what you're doing, Jim. I appreciate it. Yeah, but I feel like that's what people are looking for. It's like when I do some career coaching, it's like they think there's this key stuck in their brain. If they can find it and unlock something, everything will be fixed.
Yep.
Like it's that next certification or that next promotion or something. And then that will unlock all of my capabilities. And now I will be able to perform the way that I've always thought I could perform because there's something else that I've put in my way because of that. Now, it's easy to do that, in my opinion, because when you're working for a company, you're an employee, you're inherently giving up some accountability and responsibility to your future, to that organization, right?
Yeah.
And I find it easier then to question yourself because you don't feel fully in charge of your future. And then all of a sudden you're given all the tools to be able to do that. I'm going to leave and I'm going to start my own thing. That's scary because now all those constraints are gone. And now it's really just up to you.
Yeah, and sometimes there's excitement there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh,
Oh yeah.
I get to figure this out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But then there are times when there's just real pressure where
Reality
it's like,
sets in.
all right, there are no blockers here. What do you really want? And I think the hardest thing is for I can only speak for myself. I think the hardest thing is being honest about what it is that you need or want at any given time. And again, I got to caveat all this by saying it's an incredibly privileged place to be. Being able to choose your own adventure, especially at my age and the stage that I'm at, is an incredibly unique spot. And I don't take it for granted for a second. That being said, there's some pressure to figure something out. And sometimes that's good pressure and sometimes it's bad pressure. But I personally am excited. I think I I want to believe that opportunities come when you create them or you have to take the steps to create them. And my goal now is to try to just go out there and try a bunch of stuff and hopefully some opportunities will get created.
Yeah, for sure. And the benefit here too is that you and I have a lot of mileage. So we've seen a lot of road, a lot of asphalt.
Anybody want to buy a 1999 VW Passat wagon? I mean, I kind of think that's I'm I'm the 99 Passat wagon of digital marketing
Is
guys.
that right? That's
Yeah.
better than being the 99 Aztec of
Those are just so ugly, they're cool though.
that's true.
I'm just ugly and
Thanks
beat up.
to Breaking Bad,
Right.
they it got an extended life. The thing for me though is that, and you mentioned your wife. I think what was very key for me is not processing this all internally, which as a guy, I think we're more inclined to process a lot of this stuff internally. And but fighting through that and being able to share with other people what I was thinking about, having a trusted network that I could reach out and show things to. Like I've got this webinar coming up and I just sent the graphic of what I was going to promote to like a couple of people. I was just like, "Does this look good? I know you're not the target audience or whatever." And I got responses back and people like, "Oh, there's too much text and but otherwise it looks good," or something. And like just being able to have that network around you of people that you've built over these years, because I know a lot of people that they're like, "Let the bridges I burn light the way towards my success." Jim. That's been key for me is building that network over the time of trusted people that I could just bounce things off of. And it didn't always have to be like this big heavy thing. Should I invest in this or should I buy this thing or should I make this huge decision? Sometimes it's just those little nudges along the way that can really help you build more confidence in leaning into that new direction.
It sounds as you're describing that a switch flipped, and I'm gonna get a little, woo-woo here, but I think a lot of people and I can maybe speak more for guys, but I think a lot of people in the early and mid to maybe 2/3 of their career kind of operate from a place of fear,
Yeah,
afraid
for
of
sure.
making mistakes, afraid of
Yep.
looking bad, afraid of
Yeah, I
saying
don't
the
want to
wrong
look dumb.
thing. Yeah, and what I just heard you say is you are kind of working from a place of, "I'm gonna try to make as many connections as I can and feed off of that." I might get some no's, I might get some negatives, but the positives I get are gonna be worth the risk of putting myself out there and seeking to get either feedback or support or direction or encouragement or strength or confidence or positivity from your network. Like, I don't wanna say that's working from a point of view of abundance, but it sure sounds like it.
Yeah, I mean, it's again going back to that mindset. I've talked about it a couple of times here. Is that you've got to have a abundance mindset. I mean, even if you're starting a business, even if you're starting a business and you're going to close it, like you can't lose that feeling.
Yeah.
It's difficult. It's difficult to be successful with that with a closed mindset.
Yeah. It's hard to talk to a 30-year-old about an abundance mindset when they're under
Sure.
intense pressure to keep leveling up and
Yeah.
they're trying to establish themselves professionally and maybe trying to find a foothold economically, but
Oh yeah. I mean, even in my late 20s, like I was still trying to impress my parents. I because I had gone into graphic design and web design, and you couldn't explain to them what you did for a living, and they didn't understand it.
yeah. How are you gonna translate this wisdom that you gained, this hard won
Yeah.
insight and knowledge into your coaching work? Like, how will you build that in? Do you have the Kurt Schmidt system that you're gonna bring to the world, or is it
Yeah.
more individualistic at this point?
No, I mean, I do have a system in place, and it starts with top down. It starts with leadership and making sure that they are in, just like we were just talking about, they are in the right space to make this happen. I think that's key to
S
being successful in a service-based business, because the way you provide service, the quality of the service, the experience that you generate, all of this trickles down from how leadership approaches the subject of service in general.
Yeah.
And if they approach it in a very scarcity mindset, in a very transactional mindset, they're not going to achieve the kind of growth that they're hoping to achieve. And so for me, there is a framework, and it starts with this top down sort of approach of making sure the leadership and the people that are running the place are in a good headspace, that they feel confident, they feel comfortable, they feel that they have the hands on the wheel, and that it's not the clients that have the hands on the wheel. Where
Yep.
in a lot of cases that might not be the case. And if the clients do have their hands on the wheel and they're passengers in their own agency, then yeah, and then I've got a framework that slowly allows us to get back in the driver's seat and let the customer get into the back seat comfortable with a nice drink, tinted windows, and enjoy the ride. So that's the real that's the real goal. But you can't just start with the sales team or how they market themselves. You've got to start with leadership, because it really all begins there. All the signals begin there.
Starts at the top.
It does.
So, let me ask you a hypothetical.
Yeah.
Imagine you were talking to a mid-career, late career person that just wound down a professional services organization and was starting to explore what comes next, and this person had a little bit of time to figure it out.
Yeah.
What would your advice be for that person? What would the first step that you'd suggest this person take be?
Similar to me, it was doing an internal audit. It was going around to trusted people and asking them how they thought about me, and then auditing the types of questions I was getting asked, auditing the types of things people were thanking me for. I would go through old emails. I went through a lot of self-reflection, of understanding I had been working in this career and doing this stuff for this amount of time. Now, how did the world view me and what my value was? And now that isn't to say the world is going to determine my value. That's not the point of what I'm saying. What I'm saying is what are the signals people are giving me back? Because early on, I thought, I mean, I can help most businesses. I can just help businesses. But over and over again, I was told by people around me that because I had worked for a super giant, fast growing agency that shattered a lot of records and then I built my own agency, all of a sudden they always looked at me as that, right? And so I had to embrace basically saying, I'm not going to go into Ecolab and do business coaching, right? I'm always going to be a pirate. I can never join the Navy. So I have to embrace my pirateness. Pirate? I don't know what the word, what the right word is. But I've always loved the idea of, and I get excited about customer service, providing service to people. It's been a passion of mine my entire career. And and that was a lot of the feedback people were giving me, was that I was very good at determining what that looked like. And so it wasn't just this decision that I made in a vacuum where I read a bunch of books and did some like hot yoga or something. Like it was, or meditation or things like that. It was really going out just like I would test a product in a way. Like go out to the market and see what they're asking me for.
Yeah, when in doubt, go to the market. I mean,
Yeah.
it's just great. It's just great advice.
Yeah. And for me, again, because I had been very intentional about building a community around me of people that I had helped over the years. And now they were in a very great position to help me out by giving me that feedback. This is how I see you. I see you as kind of a mentor type person, a type of person to help you with career choices, life choices. And that also gave me a lot of confidence to write the second book on basically like sort of this is my framework on like how I kind of run my life and I can share it with people. And I wasn't comfortable doing that before, Jim, because it was a very vulnerable position. There's a lot of personal stories in there. But after talking to the market, my community, that's what they wanted from me. So
Well, give the people what they want, Kurt.
give the people what they want and then enjoy the ride. Again, get on the board and surf the wave, man. Like, why not? Like, what's the worst thing that's going to happen?
I think that sense of adventure, I think, is a really good one. What is the worst that could happen? Let's go figure it out.
Yeah. Again, I can always go and get a job at the Amazon warehouse if I need to make money. But if I can really provide value to people and get joy out of doing it, like it's going to be fun. And I'm having a ton of fun right now. Like I'm designing like a scorecard for agencies to take, right? Like a digital agency maturity
Yep.
scorecard with a bunch of questions, and it kind of spits out like where your maturity is as an organization. I'm working on a couple of ebooks. I'm doing these webinars. I've got one coming up where I'm basically just like, how do you get high paying clients as an agency? I'm going to show you what worked at Foundry, and I'm just going to teach you how to do it. And if you look at it and you're like, wow, that's a lot of work, I could use some help doing that, then you can hire me.
Yeah.
But to me, I'm just taking the cues from all the great marketers out there, the Gary V's, the Alex Hermosis, the whichever, is just go and give away as much stuff as I possibly can, and good stuff will come my way. So I'm gonna have fun doing that.
Yeah, the most interesting people are gonna find you through what you put out there.
Yeah. Yep.
So if you wanna find interesting people, put out interesting content, put out
Right.
interesting
Exactly.
stories. I
Exactly.
mean, that's send it out.
And let me ask you, Jim, as you have made some of these big decisions about making moves in your career, was there a similar approach you took to each decision, or was every single one a unique challenge for you?
I would say that everyone was a slightly unique challenge. And as I made moves in my career, it was a combination of sometimes the situation that I was in wasn't going to get me where I wanted to go. Sometimes there were doors open to me that I wanted to go through. Sometimes there were doors open to me that I was pushed through. And then there was finally it was I need to take a shot and do my own thing while I still
Yeah.
have the time and the energy and the talent to do it.
Right.
I think going forward now, what I'm trying to get clear on is where would my skills, such as they are, be most beneficial? Is it in the public sector, working for a nonprofit? Is it
Mhm. Mhm.
working behind the scenes as a counselor or advisor to other folks, specifically new managers, new directors, people in the middle? Would it be running my own small business? So I'm trying to figure it out. What I what I know though is that there were some times in my career where I would walk into a room with a client and some collaborators, and I would have 100% clarity and 100% confidence on the idea that I was part of a unique team that was uniquely qualified to help them solve a problem. And the inner voice in my head is, we love this stuff. We know this better than it. We know how to help you get your problem solved better than
Yep.
almost anybody.
Yep.
And there were probably 15 or 20 times where we had client engagements I was part of client engagements over the last 15 years where I felt like there was nobody better in the world to come together to solve these problems than the team that I was a small part of. And so I'm hoping to be in a situation where that kind of focus and clarity and confidence can come back again.
Mhm.
I don't know, that
Yeah.
sounds pretty woo. That sounds pretty woo.
Eh,
That sounds very, very, very nebulous, but it's sort of
it makes sense.
it's the impulse that I'm starting from. Now that's gonna have to get clarified into some sort of specific offering. We'll see if I can get there.
Yeah. Yeah, you and I both. All right, Jim, I could talk to you all day. We're gonna have to do more episodes like this. If I want to get in touch with you, Jim, if I want to follow what's next, where do I find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Last name is spelled Cuene. You can also still find me at hellofahren.com. That's hello, and then Fahren is spelled FAHREN.com. I am writing an occasional newsletter called Business Drivers. You can find that on the Fahren website.
It's a great
But
newsletter.
generally find me on LinkedIn.
Awesome.
And if you can't find me on LinkedIn, find me at your local pizza restaurant because I'm a pizza nerd.
That's right. That's right. Enjoy a good pizza. All right, Jim. Thanks again for your time. I always appreciate your thoughts and your mentorship. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Kurt. I learned a lot in the time that we had here, and it's really, really helpful. I feel energized coming out of this. So thank you.
Awesome. All right, everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join me and Jim. Appreciate you taking the time out of your week. One last nudge, the new book 10-10-10 available on Amazon, and it's a good book. Lots of people like it. So go and check it out. Thanks, and we will see you next time.